Nobody signed on yet. We're on.
Welcome to this afternoon, Thursday, October 8th. This is a preliminary budget presentation. And in a minute, I'm going to turn it over to Frank Gould, our treasurer. First of all, there is a website that you at home that can go to on the homeowner's website. It is the the budget presentation PowerPoint presentation. I got two words in there, didn't I, Brian? But anyway, you can go on that website. You can have the PDF of what we're going to be seeing here in the audience today. So with that, one last thing I will ask board members. At the end of this, Frank Gould would like to ask the value of this budget presentation. So we're going to ask for your comments at this end. Without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Frank Gould.
Thank you, Mr. President. Can you all hear me okay? Yeah. And you can see the screen all right? Okay. As Roger said, the purpose of today's presentation is to provide you with a preliminary view of the HOA's 2021 budget. As background for creating the 2021 budget, let's look at how we use the current annual dues, the $1,466. That is distributed in three major categories. The largest amount naturally goes to operations, but two lesser amounts to the Capital Reserve Fund as well as the Capital Improvement Fund. And that totals the $1,466 per resident. This chart shows the money allocated to operations, how it is used in operations in the 2020 budget. This was the 83% that you saw on the previous slide. Included in administration costs are the expenses associated with our fitness center, and the reference to the carryover fund is the net amount at the end of 2018. The last three areas on the chart show the net amount from these activities. And as far as golf goes for 2020, it was projected that they would be making a $7,000 profit, which reduced the total costs. So that's how the funding for 2020 was set up for operations. For the creation of the 2021 budget, the slide shows the sequential steps that we are following in its creation. The department heads started in June to develop their budgets. In August, there were micro-level reviews of each department's budget. And as you know, there were separate meetings for each of the departments budgets. The attendees and participants in these meetings are as listed. Following those meetings, the agreed to changes, with some still pending, were incorporated into the budgets, and that's led us to the development of this preliminary budget that you're reviewing today. The last step in the process will be the final budget for 2021 that will be presented for your approval at the end of this month on the 28th, after the board meeting. I want to briefly mention and describe the 5 areas that make up our overall budget. The capital reserve look at that as a fund that's used to cover costs to replace or enhance the HOA's existing assets. Capital improvement fund, that's used to purchase new items, such as a building addition or an additional vehicle, such as a car, a truck, a lawnmower, etc. But something that does not exist today, something we have not purchased in the past. And then the operating budget, which we've gone through in detail, that's the third item. In addition to these three areas, there are two that affect only our homeowners in Palo Verde. That's the PV Gate Fund, as well as the PV Road Fund. And as you know, the Road Fund is handled independently by the Road Commission that's elected by the folks that live in Palo Verde. As it states here, there's no anticipated increase at this time in the road fund. Before I show you the current view of 2021, these next two slides provide some general information about next year's budget. The numbers are still tentative. They'll be presented rounded to the closest thousand, and the proposed staff wage increases are included in the budget. And as far as the impact of the coronavirus, that has been included also. And the major thing in the impact of the coronavirus is in golf revenues. They're projected to be lower because annual memberships will decrease. It's anticipated that none of the Canadian golfers will return this year. If I remember correctly, I think that Desmond said there was about 68 folks who bought annual memberships that are from Canada. He's not planning on any of them returning in 2021. And he also included a 5% reduction in other golfers' return. He did increase the annual golf rate by 2%. The discussion that we'll be using on the following slides is similar to what has been used in the past, which is sources of funds and uses of those funds. And again, I want to emphasize that this is still tentative. There are some modifications, some adjustments that are pending, so that we don't view this as the final. It is not the final. These are the sources of funds for 2021. And we start out with what we are paying in 2020. We reduce that amount by what we are setting up to contribute to the capital reserve and capital improvement funds in 2021, 812 to the reserve, 114 to the improvement. That leaves us with $4,658,000 from current homeowners dues that will be used in 2021. In addition, we have other net income, some transfer fees, miscellaneous, that's $175,000, and you can read on down the slide. The homeowners dues, the carry forward fund, that's the balance as of the end of 2019. That was the balance on the books as of the end of 2019. So that's available to use for the 2021 budget. So the net amount of this for sources for next year, we have $11,557,000. Okay, so how do we plan to use this? Whoops, I think I went too far. Okay, this is the uses of the funds for next year. And again, this is all operations because I've already shown the two amounts that we're using for capital improvement and the capital reserve. We add those all together and we come up with $11,700,000 to cover the projected costs of the day-to-day operations. And I'll keep emphasizing this, it is still tentative. there will be adjustments to this $11,700,000. So the summary, we've got 11,557,000 in sources. We got costs of 11,700,000. Currently, that leaves us a shortfall of $143,000. Per household, that amounts to $38. It's $3.13 per month. And that shows an annual increase of 2.59%. And again, that's tentative and a couple adjustments left. So we'll see how it goes. Questions?
Yeah, Frank?
Yes.
Yeah, hi. Do you hear me okay?
Yeah, I'm fine. Yeah.
All right.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
Fine. You've got a great voice. I'm just curious, and I'm actually asking this more for clarification for people who might not be that familiar with the budget. If you look at the 2021 budget and the percentage amounts from each administration, patrol facilities, and so on, and you look at what we are currently looking at for the end of the year, it seems like there's a huge drop in percentage. For example, administration in operations split shows 28%, for next year it shows 14%. And there's other ones like that too, and I'm just kind of questioning, am I looking at that wrong, or how is that interpreted?
You're talking about the decrease in patrol?
Well, for example, administration shows 28% on the operation split, but for next year it shows 14%. Well, that's a huge decrease. So I was just curious why it's apples and apples, or is this apples and
Well, Brian, you can correct me on this, but the big drop in patrol was because of the employees that were running the fitness center last year, or this year in the budget for 2020 were in the patrol budget. Next year, they're going to be in the admin budget. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay.
So that's the reason for one dropping by that and one going up, and the increase in the other.
Okay. Yeah, I was curious because I noticed some of them, looked like a major drop that I didn't.
Sure.
Because there's no what do you call it?
Well, there's no.
No.
I didn't give you any explanation.
Right.
No, I
So
can't.
some of these things just sort of jumped out at me as red flags.
Oh, sure, but it is noticeable. You're right.
But I see what you're saying. Some of these are, some of the expenses are being transferred into other areas.
And the fitness centers in the 2021 budget, Brian and I have talked about this because we were talking about proposing, and I'm just going to say proposing that we do something individually for the fitness center. But to do it for 2021 was going to be a challenge in that we had 3 leadership changes in the fitness center this year. And trying to come up with that was going to be, you're not sure where you would have ended up. So with it being a little more stable in 2021, that may be a proposal of showing it's similar to what we do with recreation. But we'll have to see. We'll have to see where it fits. I'm just throwing that out there, just so you know.
Started off when we talked about the current homeowner fees and that sort of stuff. We made reference to that was per person, and that is per residence, per household.
It's per homeowner, per resident. Yeah. It's not like it's one per person. It's one for the house.
If you're married, you don't have to pay those.
Correct, unless there's a third party, and then there's an extra fee for those.
Okay. Thanks, Frank.
Oh, you're welcome. Don, you had a question?
Under the sources of funds, you have $175,000 for other HOA income. We've used that for several years. But through August, we've sold 231 homes for $338,378. Brian went back and looked at that a couple of years ago, and we averaged selling 300 homes a year. I think it's time we revisit that $175,000.
Okay? We can do that.
That's understated, I believe.
Yeah,
by
I-
about $150,000.
Okay, I'll get with Brian and we'll look at that and get back to you before the end of the month, so we'll see what, because we could adjust that if necessary, or if that's the right thing to do, we could do it before the end of the month,
The other thing, I'd like to see more detail on the budget. As a board, we're responsible for fiduciary responsibilities. We're responsible for the association's money, our homeowners' money. And I don't feel comfortable looking at what you've shown without looking at more of the detailed backup. As an example, the annual inflation rate has averaged 1.7% for the last 4 years. Our average budget increase has been 5.7%. This year it's 4.7% with a forecasted inflation rate of 1.6. I realize this has been a bad year. And I also realize that no organization, when they budget, follow inflation right to the letter. But I believe they get a lot closer than 1.6 versus 1.7%, or the 4-year average of 5.73 against the 4-year average inflation rate of 1.7. So Roger mentioned that you're going to ask a question at the end. I would like to address part of that now,
That'd be fine, go ahead, yeah.
rather than not have enough, or rather than, do you think this meeting's important? I think we ought to have more. And I think we all ought to be closer involved in each step of the budget. When I say all, I'm talking about the entire board. We used to do that. The president of the board liaison for that department, and the treasurer would all sit and go over the budget. And I think we've done that. But I think we've eliminated a couple of steps in the budget this year. And I thought that was unfortunate that we did that. I think as a board, we need to be more instead of less involved. So I would like to see more detail in the proposed budget.
You want more detail in the presentation or more detail shared with you?
I think the board needs more detail, not necessarily in the presentation, but in how the numbers were created.
Okay? Yeah. One thing in response to the percent increase, in the last 3 to 4 years, part of that was the requirement that the HOA and a lot of other businesses had to meet in wage increases. The state changed the law on getting to some minimum wage, and I know in our food and beverage area, we had a lot of folks at the lower wage level that we had to increase. And that consequently caused increases in other areas that wouldn't normally be affected, but you'd like to keep the gap. Like to keep some noticeable gap between the jobs. So people that are in those jobs, feel comfortable and work here rather than going somewhere else. I mean, I know that was part of the reason for the percent increase being out of sync with the cost of living increases.
I understand that.
Yeah, and that's part of it, yeah.
Yeah, I understand that, and I factored it in, but as an example, you talked about food and beverage. In the last 4 years, we've increased food and beverage budget by almost $1 million, just short of $1 million. And during that 4 years, the food and beverage department has also increased the price of meals, the price of liquor by some 20 to 25%. So that's a big number, a real big number. So I just point that out. And golf's a big number.
Okay,
And golf supposedly is standalone. I don't believe it'll be standalone this year. We've talked about that.
yeah, I tend to agree with you, yes, yeah.
I think we're gonna have to.
Yeah, I agree with you. You look at that and you're right, I do.
I think we're gonna have to help that along. At any rate, I'd like to see more of the backup, more of the detail in how the 2021 budget was put together.
Okay,
Frank, I understand that, as you and Brian work on this, the possibility of per household will go down, right?
possibility of that, yes.
I understand someone told me that we're going up to $15 an hour for, on our employees that are not.
I can't answer that.
Who told me that? Somebody, was it you, Brian?
No,
That the state is going up to $15 an hour this year?
no, it went up like 15 cents an hour,
15 cents.
15 cents an hour.
But anyway, as of the 28th, you feel that on that $3.13.
Well, it all.
I can tell you where we're really hurting, if you want to hear a story. We're really hurting housekeeping. You cannot keep housekeepers here at the rate we're paying.
Right, agreed, exactly correct.
You just can't do it. I mean, you want good services, you want a clean establishment. Jim is scrambling, literally scrambling. And I feel sorry for his housekeepers that have stayed with us because they're doing double and triple the work they were doing. So we're gonna have to increase those salaries. If we don't, I don't know what the answer is. Maybe outsourcing it.
Yeah, and I'll throw one thing out, rather than continue the discussion, but I'll throw one item out there. I've seen signs out in front of Target that they have starting salaries, starting wages, and they have a big sign outside the store, $15 an hour.
Yeah.
So you can only imagine, take that to the other, the rest of, the workforce that we got here and do some comparison, but it was like, oh my God.
I could tell you, we just didn't throw a dart and come up with that dollar amount. So if you think it's gonna fluctuate, wait, it isn't. That's about where we are right now.
Is it?
Yes. If we knew we could reduce it, it'd be reduced. But if we're lucky, it's right there with COVID. You're very lucky. You should consider yourself blessed. For $3.13 a month?
Yeah.
Come on.
Any other comments by the board members? Okay, now, Frank, are you pretty much done?
I'm finished.
Don?
Thank you all.
Well, thank you. Appreciate your time. Board members, Don has already kind of expressed if there's anybody else that would like to say something to Frank or offer to have suggestions, and this has to do with the value of the information that we get in this budget presentation. Is there anybody who would like to comment? Okay, I will say, as far as I'm concerned, that I feel like Don does, that these meetings sometimes are, I'm gonna say this, they need to be more. we need to have more meetings like this as far as the budget is concerned. And I'd like to see us get a little bit more in depth of how the numbers were arrived, similar to what Don was. Don may have a difference of opinion of what, but I would like to see some more. So that's my opinion, okay? Now, for those of you that are viewing at home on live stream, please don't forget that on October 28th, after the board meeting, the final budget meeting will be presented and voted on by the board members. I'd like to thank those that were watching and following along on live streaming. I'd like to thank all the managers that are here. Special thanks go to Brian Shaw. I know there was a lot of work, and I know you had some sleepless nights coming up with all this information, but I want to thank you. Brian Maston, I want to thank you for what you do in putting this live stream on and helping the homeowners see what we see here every time we have a meeting. Thank you very much. And with that, I am going to adjourn the meeting.
Thank you, Zach.